Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar from point of engagement to checkout, personalizing the guest experience and revenue stream. This webinar is presented by Revinate, StayNTouch, and Aveo. My name is Justin DeRisi, and I will be your host for this afternoon. I'm joined today by our esteemed panel. First off, we have Rich Tuckwell-Scuda. Rich is the president of Aveo North America and is responsible for driving direct bookings growth by understanding the guest experience and emotive journey to provide solutions that increase guest engagement. Ryan King is the director of strategic partnerships at StayNTouch and is responsible for discovering new methods that enable hoteliers to better engage with guests and increase revenues through better service and marketing. Finally, Erika Rich is the Senior Hospitality Marketing Strategist at Revinate and is responsible for maximizing customer success through the education and adoption of hotel email marketing best practices. Moving on to our agenda today, we're going to cover a number of different aspects of personalization. We're going to start off by looking at why customization and personalization is so essential in today's hotel market. We're going to look at personalizing your website and booking experience to get more direct bookings. We're also going to look at leveraging mobility to drive more guest engagement and greater revenue during their stay. And finally, we're going to look at how to leverage targeted marketing to build better guest relationships post-stay. Why is personalization so important? There's a number of reasons why you really should focus on personalization and customization. First off, because travelers want more personalization. If you look at today's market, 74% of travelers want substantial proactive digital involvement from hotels in order to improve their experience. And 80% want to be able to set and share their personal preferences to improve their experience. Booking intent of returning visitors to your website is also more than twice that of first-timers. So it's really important to allow them to sort of set that personalized experience early so that they will return. Personalized communications result in 20% higher opens, 70% higher click-through rates, and 73% higher revenue per recipient. So if you can really make your communications directly relevant to your audience, they're more likely to click and purchase your products. After the presentation, we will have a short Q&A session. Feel free to submit your questions throughout the presentation. You can do that through the question box in the middle of the control panel. I will be taking questions at the end in the order they are received. So with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to our panelists. We are going to start with Rich, and he is going to tell us how to personalize your website and bookings experience for more direct bookings.
Good morning, everybody. So for anybody that doesn't know me, Aveo is a 20-year-old leader in the industry. We have 5 offices globally, and last year we generated for our clients just shy of 2/3 of $1 billion worth of direct bookings. For those of you that have seen me speak before, I do love to talk. So if you have any questions, feel free to buzz us in the chat box, and we'll obviously do our best to answer those while we go. Justin, can you move on for me? The reason that obviously Aveo is one of the leaders of the industry, we are the first AI-powered booking engine and platform in the industry. And when we talk about booking engine engagement from an AI perspective, we have a deep learning system involved in our platform. That means that we are constantly studying data analytics, we're constantly looking at points of engagement, and we're constantly seeing how people are engaging with the website, the booking journey, and the overall platform to see where we can upsell, where we can create maximum revenue potential. Can you just click on for me? One of our key points of this, and one of the takeaways that I want to justify why I've said, is obviously we say that returning visitors are now twice as likely as first timers to book. The reason for that being is that the first, and this is based on all of our data from all of our booking engines, sort of looking at when people book and when they're booking the journey. And it's also a lot down to where the mix now has become, where people are searching. So when people come on mobile, we know that people are far more likely to book on desktop, but they are still looking on mobile, which obviously counts as a hit. When people first come to your website, they are actively exploring. So if we take me, for example, I'm based here in Miami in Avio's office in Miami. But I've never been to Chicago. So when I decide I'm going to go to Chicago, the first thing I do is I start looking at hotel websites. I start looking at where I want to stay. I start engaging with what that stay is going to be. So if I'm there for business, I'm going to have a completely different requirement to how I'm going to stay there if I'm staying as a leisure traveler. One of the things that I always say to hoteliers to be very aware of is engagement starts with your digital marketing. So if you are looking at your website stats, and obviously everybody has Google Analytics now and pretty much looks at that data, and we'll come on to that later, the first thing you want to be doing is looking at where your audience is coming from, what your mix of bookers are, and then ensuring that when they come to your website, to increase that point of conversion, you want to add as much information into your website, so pre-booking engine as possible. What's in the area, what facilities are at the hotel, what are your rooms, what is to do around you, and then try and create a journey and an engagement that requires people to interact with your website to navigate around it. The longer people stay on your website, and the longer that people are cycling through your pages and they're looking at what you do, the deeper connection you're going to have with them. Justin, could you move on for me? And one of the things I also want to cover off is meta, because when we talk about digital marketing and meta, the meta search market has changed drastically in the last 3 years. We see on average for Aveo hotel clients, we would see an 8% CPA, which is a fantastic metric. And we would normally look at, for one of our US properties, for instance, $100,000 spend would resonate to $1.3 million in revenue generated. In Europe, we see a slightly different metric where we see $170,000 spend over with a 2.8 million euro generated revenue, which would give us a 6% CPA. So again, we know that in the North American market, CPA is slightly higher or lower, depending on which way you want to look at it. This graph is showing us, and if you look at the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see that TripAdvisor has dropped in the meta search rankings 2017 versus 2018, and Google HPA still is the dominant player in the market with 52% of the market now growing, and that's a continued growth. So over 2017, Google or HPA was only 43%. So when we're looking about how we're targeting, and you can see from the stats here, obviously, Wago and Skyscanner are still very low on meta search for hotels, but very high for other sort of things like flights, etc. And then if we look at the right hand side, obviously we're seeing a slight reversal in fortunes in 2018, because obviously these 2018 stats for TripAdvisor and Trivago again, where they're kind of switching places and moving things around. The key point is that they are still they're still absolutely key to ensuring that when you're spreading your meta spend and when you're looking at your PPC, that you don't forget meta, because it is fundamentally, we know within the industry that a meta booking is never going to be a direct booking unless you actively target it. It's more likely to be an OTA booking that you've managed to convert to direct through meta. Justin, could you move on for me? And I mean, I love this slide. This traditional approach to brand.com strategy is dead. The reason we put it in there is so many people and so many hoteliers look at their websites and they say, my website's fine. I did it in 5 years ago, 6 years ago. It's only 6 years old. Technology has moved on so much in the last 2 years, never mind the last 4 years. that what was perfectly acceptable and what was perfectly great 5 years ago for engagement marketing is completely different now. If you look at the recent post from Think with Google, 63% of brands now expect the brands that they are buying from, or the brands that they are booking from, or the brands they're taking service with, to personalize that. I read a white paper last year called The Connected Hotelier, where I kind of explored this more on the desirement. And desirement, just so anybody's aware, in AI technologies, is basically the result of something. It's an upside of something that you wanted to you were planning to do anyway. Whereas when I use that desirement term here, it is people like Netflix, which are looking at everybody you interact with, everything you're listening to, everything you're doing, and they are suggesting something that they believe through their AI technologies and through their mapping and their personality profiling is something that you are going to enjoy. It's the same with Netflix, it's the same with Amazon, you know, telling you what to buy and what your friends have bought, and Google telling you everything, including your inside leg measurement. One of the things that we need to look at when we're discussing what brand.com strategy now is how are you appealing on a personalized level? Because if you aren't appealing on a personalized level, you aren't connecting, because 63% of people now expect you to know something about them, or to have some prior knowledge of them, or to be using some stat you've collected from somewhere, or some information from a past booking to really drive home why they should be staying with you. Justin, onwards, please. The future of booker engagement is auto-personalization upon entry. Now, the reason I call it auto-personalization upon entry is we want everybody that comes to your website. And again, when we say auto-personalization upon entry, this is a roadmap that goes from the beginning, the very first thing you launch. So you look at your Google Analytics and you say, okay, 60% of my bookers in Chicago come from New York. So I need to create packages, and I need to create stay rates, and I need to create all of this stuff that makes New Yorkers book whenever they come to me, because I know half my audience is from New York. We then move to the next level, which is when those people come to the website, do I have information on there that is appealing to the 60% of my audience that are from New York? So what do New Yorkers want to do when they're in Chicago? Are they all visiting for business? Of course they're not. Some of them are visiting for pleasure. Some of them are visiting for whatever reason. So we need to make sure that their website contains enough information that I automatically, when I come into it, connect with it. It's a different level of personalization, because it's not auto-personalization, it's just a wider scheme. And then we need to look at the booking engine. Justin, can you jump on for me? And so when we're coming into a website, what we want to be doing, and I'm going to switch here to this idea. So I'm a German and I'm coming to New York. Does my website translate into German? Do I know what my overall audience is? So if 35% of my audience is German, I absolutely should have my website translated into German, and I should have an ability for a German to read their own language, because we know the conversion rate of booking inside your own language is much, much higher. The same with currencies. Now, one of the things I'll say here is obviously, and the reason we know how well this translates and how well this converts, is Avio's system does this automatically. So when we talk about auto-personalization, I'm talking to about somebody coming to my website or coming to my booking engine, a scrape saying, okay, this is a German operating platform, so this is going to convert higher if I appeal to them in German language. And I now know that they actually don't want to see USD, they want to see Euro. So I'm going to auto convert that currency as well. So in our case, Avio would convert that booking engine completely into German, create the Euro price tag that obviously carries all the way through to the North American market, and allows me as the booker to feel completely immersed inside my own auto-personalized world. I'm now speaking my language, I'm seeing my currency, and hopefully I'm seeing offers that are directly geared towards me. Because again, when I studied my stats, I knew that 32% of my audience, or 40% of my audience, was coming from Germany. So I should have some form of rate built in there. I should do some market analytics that says how much do Germans spend when they come to New York? What's the average ABV? What should I be doing to make sure that when that person comes to my website, not only do they get all of this information that is personal to me, I'm also giving them offers that are personal to them. Justin, could you just skip on for me? And when we say this, this next slide is again, it's the Aveo recommender engine. So this particular visitor has come in, it's a North American coming into the UK, or sorry, vice versa, it's a UK visitor coming into North America or into Europe, into Ireland, obviously. UK is still part of the EU temporarily until decisions are made at the end of whenever. And so this recommender engine is saying, okay, you're English, so here is the website in English because that's your operating platform. Here is your currency in GBP. And more importantly, here's an offer for you as a UK visitor, and I'm going to give you 10% off if you book now. When we look at these offers, I always say to people, how much commission would this cost you to an OTA? 18 to 22%. So if you are working within a metric of removing or moving as much of your OTA traffic as possible to direct, a 10% discount to get a visitor who come direct to your website through possibly a PPC campaign or just organic is a significant lower rate than if you'd got that booking through an OTA. So it's absolutely worth building these out to ensure that when people are coming to you and when people are coming to your website, you are giving them bespoke offers. And again, if I click that link and I go through there, that's now going to automatically apply that rate for me to all of the booking engine rates to ensure that I get the best. When we talk about the difference that this makes, and it's humongous. I mean, it's just a massive stat. This particular client, when we turned on these personalized offers for them and we put these in, they went from a booking engine conversion of 3% to 9%. So yeah, and we're near double digits. So we are very lucky at Aveo in the fact that probably I would say 75–80% of our clients all sit in the 8 to 12% booking engine conversion for the booking engine. So we're already the industry leader when it comes to that. But what we can do with our hotels that may not necessarily be marketing themselves particularly well, so the organic traffic that comes into the website isn't particularly marketed at, it's just traffic that's ended up there from generic search. What we can then do is pull all of that analytical data together. And again, this is stuff that everybody can do with various different softwares that you can put together and place together and piecemeal together to create this, where somebody comes to your website, you recognize who they are, and you have an offer built in, whether it's through your revenue management system that says, okay, I recognize you, I know your personality, I know your profile, and this is what you're worth to me. Because that level of personalization makes an overall huge difference to your overall engagement. If you could click on to the next one for me. When we're talking about data, this is from a small selection of Aveo hotels. So I basically, we pulled the data, or the AI and the machine learned data, from 186 Aveo properties to see globally what that looks like. And from 186 properties, we had 26.8 million visitors, all profiled through Aveo and through our AI engine, 50,700 plus unique web pages, and this is non-booking engines, analyzed and looked for intent signals. So what are people looking at? Are they looking at the excursions page? Are they looking at this? Are they looking at that? Blah, blah, blah. 983 learning models, and then 723,000 plus bookings where users are evaluated on one of our learning models. This means that we can now see all of this data. We know how 8 million booking engine pages interacted with those visitors. So what were their buying cues? How were they moving? And we can now create profiles where we say, okay, so we know that somebody that comes from Germany to New York who now has this offer they get that offer because they've navigated around our website in the same way that 3 million other Germans all navigated around that website. Big data is only big data unless you know how to read it and if you have a process in place to analyze what is important to you. If you take big data and break it down into small chunks, it becomes manageable data. Yeah, can you jump on, Justin? And then you end up with this situation which is real auto personalization upon entry. So this is, again, Avio's booking engine. I have booked previously with this hotel. So when I return to the website, and obviously I haven't, Frank, our CEO, did, when I return to this website, it automatically recognizes me. So it's now IP tagged me, it knows who I am, it knows what my booking is, it knows what I've done. And rather than try and sell me a room, because I don't know who it is normally, so I'm just going to sell you the room, I'm going to have the same journey as everybody else. Now I'm saying, okay, actually, I know you're Frank. I know you're already staying with us, so you don't want any of that messaging that's bog standard in my website. You don't want to know what my room rate is for tonight. You don't want to know any of this other information. What you now want is the ability to look at your reservation. You want to add dinner to your stay possibly. You might want to extend your stay. You might want a late checkout. I'm going to get you to engage with my TripAdvisor reviews. I'm going to get you to engage with my social media because you're coming to see me. And I know that on Facebook, I've got 1 million great reviews. So I want you to see that because immediately you're engaging with my brand. And I'm going to let you know I've got an Instagram page. So actually, if you're one of the, gazillion Instagram influencers that have 15,000 followers and think that means that you can come and stay at my hotel for free, you can let me know that, and then you can post all of your photos on your Instagram, which I'm going to thank you for and do nothing else. So when we're looking at this, the reason that we need that personalization is I can now offer Frank a completely different experience and a unique personalized experience to Frank than over anybody else. And if you can just jump on for me. And then one of the things that we at Aveo are doing at the moment is looking at how we work with the booking confirmation. So we all know that booking confirmation is it's the last point really of engagement before somebody is on your property. Obviously, you have your post-stay, your pre-stay emails, etc. But this is the last thing once somebody has booked that reservation. That is their connection to your property. So how do we continue to maximize that engagement? In this case, we take the booking, we personalize it again, so you can see that Kara's just booked here, and now we put the booking confirmation inside the engine. And we say, next time you come back, you don't have to worry about keeping that reservation email because now it's here. And every time you come back to the website, I'm going to recognize you. I'm going to engage with you. I'm going to greet you by name. I'm going to look at the things that you would be looking to do at that point that you come to the website. So if you're coming 3 days out, you probably want directions. In this scenario, Kara has booked a romantic break. So now I'm going to offer Kara all the upsells that go with a romantic break. So do I want her to upsell a room, and do I want her to go into a suite? Do I want to give her wine and flowers in the rooms? Etc., etc. So from the grand scheme of things, the ability to personalize and to hone that down gives us much greater engagement and makes the guest feel more valued. And that is my speech.
Thank you very much, Rich, for that insightful presentation. We're now going to move on to Ryan with StayNTouch, and he will discuss how to leverage mobility to drive more guest engagement and greater revenue.
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, Rich made some great points about personalizing the guest experience when they're doing their shopping. And I think that it's very important to realize how that equates to somebody feeling more comfortable and wanting to actually do more incremental revenues. Travelers nowadays really are looking for more control over their experience. They want to be able to personalize what they do. And we all now carry around these ubiquitous devices in our hands, and our mobile phone has become this trusted source of information. So being able to use a mobile phone is what's going to help you drive that last incremental revenue sale just prior to arrival. And a lot of this comes in how you're doing your messaging and being able to have a mobile check-in available to the guest through their phone or at the property through a kiosk method. And some of this has popped up, I think, over the last period of time is, how we've changed as consumers and what that expectation of service has changed to. My sister is an avid traveler for Boeing, and she does not want to stand in line and wait to get her key. Her biggest happy spot in her whole stay is that after she lands late at night, that she can get on her phone, she can check into the room, and she can get her mobile key, and she can walk up and get there. Now, what she's asked for is that because she goes to a particular hotel all the time, she's like, what I'd really like for them to do is send me a message and say, hey, we know every night that you're here, you ask for a pot of hot water. So think about how that service level changes there. You know, when you start thinking about the data and what you use to monetize things with service, you need to think about how that data comes out of your PMS. And most of this has to do with how you're sharing these type of things and enabling mobility for your staff and your guests. And when I talk about mobility, this is changing that guest engagement when they first arrive and thinking about what it is that you can do to delight them. Mobile phone check-ins and ability to do that really are easy to do. Early check-in upsells, room upgrades, any ancillary stuff, because someone's trusting their phone. They're walking through their phone right now. It's not listening to a front desk person say whether or not they may have a room or not and what the price may or may not be. They really want to look at their phone and use that, and then engage in the staff with a very different way. And thinking about how your staff can engage with the guest, if you're letting them in on a mobile phone, then what else can you do to really emphasize a good service touch on that? You know, in various studies that we've done, we've found out that 57% prefer mobile notifications about deals and the coupons in the store. And I think that's really relevant when you start talking about how you're going to get someone to upgrade their room. And when you think about this piece, think about how you're going to delight that guest and what they do. We've seen TripAdvisor reviews out there now that actually point out to others about how nifty it was to have the ability to check in their mobile phone. So we know that that's a point that's grabbing the guest experience. Guests are loving this type of convenience. And when you use the data to personalize these offers, this is when you're going to be able to have a better chance of getting the person to upgrade or do their early check-ins or whatnot. Think about all the data that you have on it and make sure you're giving relevant timed offers that are going to help them. The best time to get anyone to buy an impulse piece of product is right before they're there. So that's where the online check-in comes in with the phone, because it's just like being at that cashier checkout at CVS where they have all the gum and the candy bars there. There's a reason that all of that information is right there. There's a reason that you should be having a timed offer right as someone's checking in on their phone. And there's a reason that you use the data you have on this person to offer up the right upgrade or the right timed offer when they come in. The biggest thing I emphasize the most is in the hotel world, we kind of get a little shy about, you know, letting our guests bypass the traditional front desk mode, and we sometimes, I think, you know, kick ourselves because we sit there and think, oh, the guest really wants to talk to someone at the desk. That's not true of everyone. Your business traveler wants to bypass the front desk a lot of the time. Your visitors and your baby boomers, they want to interact with someone. If you could give your front desk agent a little more time to stand and talk to the baby boomers, they'd be delighted, while the business traveler could just whiz on by, wave, and say hi. And if you think about some of these statistics that are up here, I think the biggest thing is to think about 84% of the guests would take advantage of a mobile check-in. Now, this is a pretty big number because we haven't, as an industry, quite responded to this yet. The airlines have certainly been way ahead of us in the hotel industry, and they're really driving this mode of desire from the business traveler right now. So think about that as you go, because there's other things that come up that people want to do within the hotel, but if you can really start enabling the technology in your property to help meet the needs and the demands of these travelers as they come up, you're going to have a leg up against the competition. And this is going to give you the opportunity to serve your guest with more memorable experiences and to free up staff to do things that are going to create those experiences. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Justin.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Before we move on to Erika's presentation, I did have one quick question that I wanted to answer. One of the guests asked, what is CPA? And that is cost per acquisition. Cost per acquisition. And with that, I'd like to move on to Erika, who's going to round out the webinar with how to leverage targeted marketing to build better guest relationships. Erika?
Great, thank you so much. You know, it's wonderful to hear about how you can personalize the experience at the time of making your reservation and booking, and of course also checking in. But what can you do to really personalize that relationship that you are then developing with your guest, and really to make sure that they return again and again? And that's really what I want to focus on. And why is personalization so important? I think the answer is fairly obvious, but the data also shows that personalization is no longer really an option. It's really what consumers demand. 78% express desire for personalization. They feel frustrated when content is not personalized. And I think that's because you have so many players out there who have really made it so personal that that's now the expectation. And they're actually willing to pay more when the experience feels customized. So hotels are at a disadvantage when they're not working to personalize that guest experience, especially when your hotel stay is such an intimate, personal experience. If we can move on. So it really all starts with the guest data. And when you have, you know, a fantastic PMS like StayNTouch, you're able to collect all this really rich guest data. And then it's important to now use that in a way that helps you personalize and customize that guest experience. So kind of a look at how that works. When you take that data and ingest it into a hotel CRM, you're able to really use it to build that loyalty, to drive ROI. And of course, ultimately, it will save time because a lot of these actions can be automated, which anything you can do to make your day a little easier is definitely advantageous. If we can move on. So everyone knows as a hotelier, you have to know your guests. And that, of course, is much easier said than done. What does it mean to really know who your guests are, short of introducing yourself to every single one of them? It's, again, taking that rich data from the PMS, ingesting it into your hotel CRM, and then being able to spit it back to you in a way that provides you with insights and insightful actions on what you can do with that data. So this here is an example of our database insights report that you'll get as part of your dashboard with Revinate Marketing that allows you to see exactly who your guests are, where they're coming from, even what language they're speaking, how much they're spending with you while on property, how long they're staying, so on and so forth. And with this, you're able to actually customize the communications that you're sending because you know exactly who you're speaking to. If we can move on. So why is it so important that when you're putting together these guest communications, using that rich guest data, that they feel personalized? Well, just based on our own analysis, we have found that personalized campaigns will actually result in a 20% higher open rate, 70% higher click-through rate, and then 73% higher revenue per recipient. So that means the days of just blasting your entire database with one generic message is really no longer an option. You're not going to get the engagement. In fact, you'll get disengagement, which will ultimately hurt the next time you send out another email campaign. So it's really important to understand who those different guests are and what type of message would appeal most to them. Next slide, please. So the best way to make sure that you're getting the right message to the right audience is to build segments within your database. Again, using those database insights to really understand who your guests are and then segmenting them in a way that puts them with the right group. And now it doesn't have to be so overly complicated. It actually can be quite simple. You can look at, who are your most loyal guests? You want to be able to reward loyalty. We know points programs are very expensive and not all of that impactful. And also guests today really want instant gratification. They want to be rewarded that moment. So you can put together a list of those folks who have stayed maybe 10 times. Or maybe it's those who have spent a certain amount of money with you. Put them in a group, and then all of a sudden you can start sending them specific campaigns, and you can also make sure you're providing them with a really personalized experience while on property by knowing exactly who they are. Next slide. When we're talking about the customer journey, we're obviously talking about that inspiration stage when they get that idea of travel, what happens during that, in between that time of booking and checking in, that pre-arrival stage, then they're on property, and of course they depart. And what do you do to nurture that relationship throughout the entire cycle? Well, email communication is really one of the most powerful tools that you have, because it's one of the only tools that you have that you can use during every single one of these pivotal stages. And here is just an example, tip of the iceberg of the types of campaigns that you can be sending throughout the journey. And what I love about this particular slide is you can see every communication that has a gear next to it means that it's automated. It means that they are set it and forget it types of campaigns. So you just have to set them up that one time, and then they run in the background without you even having to do more work on them. So for example, if a guest hasn't been on property in 6 months, that could be a great time to send a We Miss You campaign. Today actually happens to be my birthday. So today I want to be receiving a birthday campaign, or maybe I should have received a campaign on the first day of June saying, book now to celebrate your birthday with us. Others are, those win-backs and OTA win-backs. So perhaps a guest booked through an OTA channel, you're able to collect their email address at the time of check-in, and then you send them a campaign that says, hey, did you know when you book with us directly, you get X, Y, and Z. And of course, there's opportunities to communicate with them while on property, thanking them for, checking in. How are they enjoying their stay? Here's how we can make your stay even better, with some upsell possibilities there. So really a lot that you can do in addition to some of those bigger one-time campaigns, like a flash sale, staycation newsletter, some of the more traditional ones that we're more used to. But when you are doing those big one-time campaigns, again, it's important to segment your database. So if you're going to do a staycation promotion, you want to make sure you're sending it to those folks who are maybe in the drive region. If you're going to do a loyalty campaign, you'll want to send it to folks who've maybe stayed 3 or more times. And the most important part is for when you're creating that campaign to make sure that they understand, why am I getting this? I once learned one of the most powerful words you can put in your email communications is the word because. We want to reward you because you have stayed with us 3 times in the past year, whatever the case may be. But giving them the understanding as to why they're getting it, that's what makes it feel so personal. It's not enough just to use a merge tag and use the person's name anymore. You have to really make it feel like the content was created just for them. If we can move on. So here is what it looks like when the entire journey comes together. This is one of our favorite customers, the Roxy Hotel in New York City, and they do such a fantastic job of building these campaigns that have a unique look and feel. They could really only belong to one property, and that is the Roxy, which is a really cool Prohibition 1920s type of property. Extraordinary history there. And you can see from the confirmation to the pre-arrival They do their OTA win back, great we miss you, and then even a loyalty campaign that was just sent out to who they call members, meaning they stayed on property 3 or more times. The entire journey now feels fluid, consistent, on brand, and they've gone ahead and they're nurturing this guest and building that relationship with these really powerful customized campaigns. Next slide. So just some quick key takeaways of just why personalization is so important. First of all, guests demand it, and guess what? They're willing to pay more for it. In order for you to personalize, you have to be able to segment your database, and that really is with the help of a powerful hotel CRM platform that allows you to run and test these segments in a very quick and easy way. You don't have to have a PhD anymore to be able to figure out how to segment your database, thankfully. And then most important, you have to deliver that quality content. If you're going to go to the trouble of personalizing and segmenting, make sure that guest understands why they're receiving that email and make that communication feel like it's coming from you. It's so great that every hotel, every resort has their own personal story. How does that translate in a communication that actually feels very personal? Because when you show up on somebody's phone or on their desktop, that's a one-to-one. That is not a one-to-many interaction. And that wraps it up for me. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Erika, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
I'm fighting the urge to sing. I'm going to say that now. I'm fighting the urge to sing.
I think we should all do it because you know what? I love a good happy birthday song. So
I'm up for it.
maybe another time. I'd like to open the floor up to questions. So we do have a couple of questions in the hopper, and because Erika is the birthday girl, I guess the first question will go to her. How can I use my guest data to do a better job at driving loyalty and repeat business?
Great, that's a great question and one that we hear really often. You know, so many hotels are still sort of stuck on the old points-based model. And, you know, there's a new study that came out that said 80% of loyalty programs fail to drive further customer engagement. So they're actually not having the impact that they were once thought to have. We actually did another study that showed that in order for points programs to be effective, you have to have at least 30,000 rooms in your inventory, which again is not realistic for most hotel brands. The most important thing you can do when you're trying to drive loyalty is to deliver that feeling of instant gratification. So I don't want to collect points anymore and then redeem them. I want you to know when I'm on property, I'm either loyal to that particular hotel, I'm actually loyal to your brand, I want to feel appreciated and rewarded. So you can actually build segments within Revinate marketing based on how many stays, how many nights a guest has stayed throughout either that portfolio or that individual hotel. And you can start sending them more personalized communications to say, hey, when you check in, you'll take advantage of X, Y, and Z. Or you can actually build out your arrivals report with those specific people, and you can reward them that way. So when they check in, hey, Miss Rich, I see that you stayed at these 3 other properties. We're so lucky to have you with us. Here's a room upgrade, just as a thank you. It's when you start delivering those really personal types of interactions and rewards that they actually will start to feel appreciated, and they'll want to stay with you again and again.
Excellent. So we have another question from Yav Swami, and they ask, what are the different kinds of alternative hospitality? I don't know if anyone wants to pick that up.
I'm assuming what you mean is sort of whether we're dealing with restaurants, whether we're dealing with stay, whether we're sort of, I mean, hospitality is, I always say hospitality is hospitality. If somebody is coming to your venue, whether that be a hotel, whether it be a restaurant, whether it be a spa, it is imperative that you are building a personalized journey and a personalized engagement for whatever product you're offering. So if I'm offering a restaurant, then and that person's come and stay and eaten in my restaurant 3 previous times, I want to engage with that person on what they love about my menu and what makes them keep coming back, because I'm then gaining personality points on what drives that person to come to me. If I'm a hotel, and again, to Erika's point, if I'm a hotel and somebody has come and stayed with me 3 times, then actually I desperately want to reward that person, because again, to her point, look, we know that loyalty programs don't achieve what we want them to achieve, so, and that people want instant gratification. So let's look at how they're engaging with whatever hospitality service I'm providing, and give them the loyalty that requires them to interact with me more, interact with my brand more, fellow properties, different restaurants, whatever it might be, so we can maximize the revenue and the journey with that guest.
Excellent. The next question is actually for Ryan. You mentioned a lot about giving the guest the choice to check in. My hotel is not part of a brand, and we don't have an app like Marriott or Hilton. How would I allow a guest to check in with their phone? Do I have to replace my entire PMS?
That's a great question. So our PMS has a native application that allows you to trigger messages, being able to offer the guest the option to check in using their phone with offers and upgrades and things of that nature. However, there are many ways that you can do this with your current PMS. We actually do integrate with other PMSs, and we can bring that same functionality with very low cost to other folks looking to do that. There's a number of other app makers that are out there too that can do this type of thing. But with technology nowadays, it's really not that expensive for individual hotel to be able to do this. And we've noticed that the boutique properties that have enabled this, they're getting a lot of use from their guests on it, and they truly believe this is a competitive stance that's given them an edge up on competing with some of the brands and making it feel a little more personal to the people coming in.
Excellent. Mary Lou asks a question. Which personalizations would you best recommend? Business, family, returning guest, anything else?
Ooh, can I take this one? Quite honestly, I would look at my metrics. So you absolutely want to have, there are multiple categories as we know, but you absolutely want to have a business program in place. You want to have a personal program in place. You want to look, and I despise this terminology, at the bleisure market, which are the business travelers that are coming to stay with you Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But then because they've been engaged with your website so much, or because they're in a new city, they're going to stay the weekend. They want something completely different at a weekend, on their weekend portion of their stay with you, to their business portion of their stay with you. So when you're looking at this, kind of look at your analytics, pull those off and say, okay, so who are the people that are coming to stay with me? And again, to Erika's point, know your audience. If you are a 70% business property, then absolutely you have to have a business. Yeah, there's no sort of like disputing that. But the 30% that is a huge chunk of your revenue, you still need that program for them. So I normally look at, I would create something for events. I would normally create something for national events, rather. Let me just prefix that, or state events. Something for business, something for pleasure, and then it's kind of a mix of both, and see what my uptake is. Analyze the stats, see what returns you're getting, and those that are working, harness. Those that aren't, find something different. We live in an age where we can change these things in an absolute heartbeat, and just by monitoring the progress and the results, we can make adjustments.
Excellent. The next question is actually for Erika. I don't have a lot of time or resources to set up a sophisticated email marketing strategy. How can someone like me get started?
The best thing that you can do is to look at that customer journey and have at least one campaign going out that fills each stage. And those are all automated, set it and forget it. So you just have to focus on it for that one day to get everything set up, and then you're done. So a pre-arrival email is absolutely key. you have to have a pre-arrival. That's when your guest is the most engaged. They're excited to come on property. It sets the tone for a great stay, and it also provides you with a great opportunity to offer upsells and to promote any revenue centers you have on property. So definitely start there. And then I'd recommend some type of win-back campaign. So when the guest checks out, hitting them within about 7 days or so with a thank you so much for staying, come back next time and enjoy X, Y, and Z. Super important, again, when you're talking about those OTA guests and getting them to come back and book with you directly. And then perhaps setting up a type of we miss you or a re-engagement campaign. If you just have a couple running in the background, you're nurturing that guest relationship and you're actually driving in some revenue while not having to, keep your foot on the gas the whole time.
Great. Yev actually has another question, and they ask, how do you implement a USP in personalization among competitors providing personalized services? And that's an open question.
I'm not sure that we have enough info to answer that question.
Yeah, maybe if they can provide a little bit more context, we'll be able to give an answer. I do have another question for Ryan. This person asks, I don't want my guests to feel like I'm nickeling and diming them for everything. How do I know when it's right to offer an upgrade or try to sell a package?
Ooh. Good question. None of us want to feel like we're nickel and dime. I just booked a airline ticket the other day, and I felt like every step of the journey they were asking me for a little bit more money as I was going through it, and it does get that buyer fatigue. However, Skift put out a big study earlier this year. Part of their mega trends in 2019 is all about upgrades and enhancements. So this goes back to earlier what all of us has talked about, is using your data. What has this person purchased from you? Are they purchasing a non-refundable rate with the most basic room? What's the chances that you're going to be able to get that person to upgrade? You have to study the data, but the chances are probably less than the person who's paying full fare for a regular sized room. They'll be more open to upgrades. The other thing to think about too is you have to test this yourself. You have to see, what is the propensity for someone that is coming in that will pay for something. Somebody that is staying for 3 nights is more inclined to upgrade the room than someone staying for 1 night. However, a business traveler might be more inclined to get a glass of wine brought to their room than a vacationer when they get there. You really just have to do a little bit of testing and then collect the data and make some assumptions on your own. Using data to make those decisions is really going to help you in deciding what to do and not making your guests feel nickel and dime fatigue.
Excellent. This next question is actually for Rich. Where are you seeing AI work really well?
Sort of like if we look at the external, so rather than just hospitality, if we look places like Spotify, Netflix, Amazon, where we have, and the airlines, where we see AI being used to calculate exact pricing, where we see AI being used to hone down to an exact spec of what somebody wants to buy, what fits into their niche market, whether they're an influencer, how they are influenced by influencers. And then if we bring that back to hotels, and we see, especially with us, with our AI platform, we're seeing a lot for the return visitor. So when we're personalizing that journey and we're speaking to them as people and personalities rather than just everybody, we see obviously the booking increase there. So I would say for alternative industries, look at streamed media, streamed television, definitely within the airlines, and then back to how you are engaging AI in your own, whether it be a chatbot, whether it be whatever kind of AI or machine learning you're using to engage with bookers. That's the sort of the area.
We actually have another AI-related question. This seems to be a two-parter. First, can you explain more around customer intent at various stages of the booking path, and how is AI helping to better inform customers and improve conversion? And then related to that, how long does a hotel need to use AI before it starts to add value?
I think the first part is definitely easy to answer. By using our analytics and by just generally using AI to crunch that huge data to see how people are engaging with your website. So for instance, if I see that somebody is, or if the AI is looking at the system and seeing that somebody is hovering around the booking page, for instance, or they're hovering around the suites page over and over again, and they're returning constantly back to the same room type, they are looking for a driving message. So AI then kicks in and offers them some package or some offer or some anti-abandonment or however it might be to get them over where they are funneling through. If we look at how people hover on websites, if we see that they are constantly looking at our things to do pages, then the likelihood is that I can then engage my AI to put together some form of platform or some form of package that gives them an experiential visit rather than just a stay visit. So again, I'm now identifying that this is more likely to be a pleasure or a leisure traveler than a business traveler. And then moving on to the second part, which I've actually forgotten. What was the second part of the question?
How long does a hotel need to use AI before it adds value?
Really, I mean, that's kind of one of those questions where as soon as you turn AI on, or even machine learning, it is going to add value because it is immediately analyzing figures, analyzing your statistics, analyzing your visitors, seeing how things are flowing, and it will identify patterns, trend, and summarize that for you in a digestible format. So really from the minute it's turned on, the likelihood is that you're probably going to see significant results, or you will have analyzed those recommendations, or the AI has made recommendations automatically for you and changed things like the booking journey or the engagement metrics. And you'll probably see an uplift in revenue, within sort of a month to the first quarter, depends on how you're engaging it and how you're using it.
Excellent. So I don't see any more questions in the queue, although I'd like to give any audience members a few more seconds in case they're just finishing typing something up. But with that, I would like to thank all of our presenters for their insightful and engaging presentations. This webinar was brought to you by Revinate, StayNTouch, and Aveo. With that, I'd like to conclude our presentation. Thank you all for coming. If you have any additional questions or comments, you can always email us at info@stayintouch.com. The webinar recording and presentation will be available to all attendees and non-attendees within 24 hours. And thank you very much once again. Have a good afternoon.